friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. During the previous night between the 22nd and the 23rd of December of 2025, the Russians carried out massive missile attack, massive drone attack through the entire territory of Ukraine. The Ukrainian sources are saying that during the previous nights, the Russians used more than 600 drones. So we have some summary about attacks. The pro-Russian sources are saying that power facilities reported hit: Burштинska thermal power plant, Ladezhinska thermal power plant, Kanevskaya power plant. Additional reports of attacks on power facilities in Lvov and Khmelnytsky Oblast without details. In Chernihiv Oblast, drone hit a power facility in Novgorod-Seversky. So the Russians carried out a massive drone and missile attack against the Ukrainian energy facility through the entire territory of Ukraine. And during the previous 12 hours, we received lots of videos, but mostly we received lots of videos about consequences of attack. So as of the moment when I started making this video, I didn't have a map where we might see the approximate roads of Russian drones and missiles that were attacking Ukrainian positions and facilities during the previous 12 hours. I believe that we will receive this detailed map in coming hours, and then we will discuss this map in the evening. And also in the evening we will discuss additional videos and additional details about this massive attack. As of now, we know for sure that currently Ukraine experiences huge problems with power supply. Most likely in coming hours we will see a partial blackout through the entire territory of Ukraine. Now let's go to the situation on the ground and let's discuss the situation along the line of combat contact. And first let's talk about the Odessa region. If you remember, during the previous days the Russians attacked the settlement of Mayagi. More precisely, the Russians were trying to destroy the bridge between the eastern and the western banks of the river of Dniester. And pro-Ukrainian sources published this video this morning or yesterday in the evening, where we can see the consequences of Russian attacks. As you can see, lots of the bridge was heavily damaged. The Ukrainians managed to probably establish some barriers with the purpose not to allow civilian vehicles to get these holes or something like this, but obviously this is not something when we can say that the bridge was repaired completely. The situation here is critical. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that this is not the first situation with the bridge, with the critical bridge. Since the beginning of the special military operation, we used to see the same things in the area of the Antonovsky bridge, in the area of the settlement of Kherson. This bridge was completely destroyed in 2022, and the sources are saying that, not the sources are saying, but we remember that Ukrainians were attacking this bridge with HIMARS missiles, and it took probably 1 or 2 months before Ukrainians managed to destroy the bridge completely. So now we can see the same story. The Russians attacked this bridge with drones, and most likely in coming days or in coming weeks the bridge would be completely destroyed. So for example, this video we received on the 19th of December, and this is the moment when the Russians just began attacking the bridge. The bridge was damaged, but not so critically as we can see right now, according to the latest video we've discussed a minute ago. So the bridge would be destroyed most likely, and I would like to remind you that according to Ukrainian sources, up to 60% of fuel supply of Ukraine goes exactly through this area. Another video published from Odessa region. Here we can see consequences of Russia's attacks on energy facilities and critical infrastructure of Ukraine that took place during the previous days. This is not the consequence of attack during the previous night. The Russians attacked this facility a few days ago, and now we received a full video where we can see the exact situation in this area. So we see that the situation continued deteriorating. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 12 hours we received lots of very important updates, and first I would like to talk with you about the city of Orekhov. During the previous 2 months the Russians reported that they managed to capture the settlement of Mala-Takhmachka, but without showing us proofs, without showing us videos that can confirm this. But today pro-Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russian soldiers on the territory of the former prison with FPV drones. So this FPV drone attack took place right exactly at this point, and this is probably the first video that confirms that Russians managed to answer the former prison. So we discussed this video just to clarify the line of combat contact. Now let's talk about the eastern Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 12 hours, the most important updates came from the Ukrainian side of the river of Gaichul. The Russians, as you can see, during the previous 48 hours managed to improve their position significantly. Furthermore, according to information we have, according to media, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Andreevka. So this village was captured, and this information was announced today by pro-Russian sources. We haven't adjusted the map because this report was published right before we started making this video, so that is why we will adjust the map during the day, during the upcoming day, and in the evening we will discuss everything in details, the village of Andreevka, and we will discuss, of course, the map that most likely would be published by pro-Ukrainian sources regarding missiles attack and drone attacks that took place during the previous 12 hours, during the previous night. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Pokrovsk. As you can see, the map has been adjusted. We adjusted the map because indeed the Ukrainians during the previous 48-72 hours carried out a counter-offensive operation in this direction with the purpose to answer the northwestern part of the city of Pokrovsk, to dig in deeper and to create immediate victory. In this video we can see how Russians were attacking abandoned Ukrainian tank. The sources are saying that this is the Australian Abrams tanks that was destroyed. So this episode took place right exactly at this point. The sources are saying that Ukrainians, using a significant number of vehicles, managed to break through Ukrainian defense along M30 road to answer the northwestern part and to land infantry. So most likely in coming days, in coming hours, the Ukrainians will repeat their attempts to get additional reinforcements, additional forces on the territory of the city of Pokrovsk. The Russians see the situation. Of course, the Russians are bombing and attacking positions along the railways that Ukrainians use for the offensive purposes. Furthermore, according to pro-Russian sources, during the previous 12 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions on the territory of the settlement of Grishna. This information was confirmed by pro-Russian sources. Now let's discuss the situation in the Dobropolye direction. This is another area with offensive operation, but this time the offensive operation was carried out by the armored forces of the Russian Federation. In this video we can see a huge convoy with the dozens of vehicles that Russians used for offensive purposes, but as you can see, Russian vehicles were ambushed and most likely damaged or even destroyed with FPV drone attacks. So this episode, this offensive operation took place in the area of this stronghold. Based on this video we have adjusted the map because we believe that Russians managed to get this stronghold, to land infantry and to capture this territory. Most likely the battle for the settlement of Zatyshe has begun. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction, where another offensive operation was launched by Russians. According to information we have, according to media, the Russians during the previous 72 hours were trying to answer the settlement of Stepanovka from the southwest. We came to this conclusion based on this video. Here we can see the same story, dozens of vehicles of the armored force of the Russian Federation that were heading towards the settlement of Stepanovka with infantry, and we can can see how Ukrainians were trying to stop and to slow down Russian forces. As a result of this attack, we don't know the exact results of this attack, but one thing is clear, that Russians managed to improve their positions. The Russians managed to bring infantry, the infantry landed and most likely managed to dig in deeper. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 22nd, this is the beginning of the 23rd, and we believe that most likely this stronghold was also captured by Russians, and most likely the clashes are taking place currently in the southwestern part of the settlement of Stepanovka. Furthermore, the Russians launched their offensive operation in the area of the village of Bereztok from the settlement of Pleshevka. This information was confirmed by pro-Russian sources and by neutral mappers. So now we can see that Russians, as a result of this series of offensive operations, are trying to establish everything, a control over everything located around the settlement of Bereztok. So Russians are trying to maintain the lines, to shorten the distances, and to establish complete control over the northern and the southern shores of the Kliban-Bitsk water reservoir. And then from these positions, most likely Russians will try to advance further in the northern direction to attack the city of Konstantinovka from behind. Now let's talk about the Slavyansk direction. During the previous 12 hours, additional changes were recorded. These are the changes between the dates. This is the situation by the end of the 20th of December. This is the moment when pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed that the city of Seversk was captured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And starting from this moment, the map began adjusting further and further in the western direction. So these are the changes, and the changes are very huge, and these changes are telling us just about one thing, that Ukrainians are not holding their lines and that Ukrainians are retreating towards the settlement of Raya Alexandrovka. Ukrainians will try to slow down the Russians on the line between Katerinovka, Kriva Luka and Raya Alexandrovka, with the purpose not to allow the Russians to get the Slavyansk power plant, because if Russians take the power plant under complete control, we will see a complete blackout situation for the cities of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, which will lead to the situation when the population of these two cities would be forced to evacuate themselves from this area towards the mainland. So this is the situation. The Russians are shortening the distance and the Russians are advancing pretty fast. The Kupiansk direction. We haven't received anything from this area, and this is probably the biggest piece of news. I would like to remind you that at the beginning of December, the Ukrainians launched their major counter-offensive operation in this direction before talks in Berlin and in Miami, with one purpose, to get stronger cards before negotiation process. But we see that it's already second day in a row when we haven't received anything. We are not saying that Ukrainians stopped their counter-offensive operation, but saying the truth, I believe that this is the situation due to a critical situation in the Sumy direction and not good situation in the Zaporozhye direction. So the Ukrainians most likely either stopped their Kupiansk counter-offensive operation, or they decided to slow themselves down because they don't have enough of forces to finish the battle for the Western Bank. And this is exactly what the Russians are waiting for. As soon as they realize that Ukrainians have no forces and power to continue a counter-offensive operation, the Russians will strike back. Now let's talk about the Kharkiv direction. This morning, the group of forces north confirmed that the settlement by the name of Prilipka was captured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. So this is the end of the 20th of December, this is the 21st of December, this is the 22nd, when the Russians reported about control over the settlement of Vilcha, and this is the beginning of 23rd. The Russians improved their positions around Prilipovka. So now the Russians managed to get the river of Seversky Donets, and most likely now they will continue offensive operation further in the southern direction along the eastern bank through this huge forest until they get the Pechenegi water reservoir, and then from these positions they will try to attack the settlement of Biely Kolodets. So they will try to outflank this dense network of the fortifications and basically to attack Ukrainian positions in this area from behind. So the Kharkiv offensive operation is also intensifying. So the situation is very difficult for the armed forces of Ukraine, during this period of time. The Ukrainians are trying to counter-attack, and today we received the report that Ukrainians attacked an oil refinery in the area of the settlement of Budyonovsk. So they're trying to do everything they can with the purpose to get stronger cards, but it seems that the situation is too difficult right now. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day.